Most chosen ones don't get destroyed by obvious evil, because obvious evil is easy to reject, easy to spot, and easy to walk away from. And that is exactly why the Archons rarely come to you as monsters. They come to you as helpers, supporters, good people, and smiling faces, because the fastest way to enter your life is not through fear, but through trust. And the most efficient way to harvest a chosen one is not through war, but through access. The kind of access you freely give when you believe someone is safe. And in the suppressed teachings that never made it into the sanitized version of the story, Jesus warned his inner circle about this exact tactic. Not in the language of psychology like we use today, but in the language of spiritual technology, because he knew something most people still do not understand, that the Archon mask is not a metaphor, it is an operating system, a method of imitation, a way for a low-frequency intelligence to borrow a human face, a human voice, and a human social role, in order to stand close enough to your field to influence it. And if you're watching this right now, it's not because you're curious. It's because you've lived the pattern. You've met the nice person who somehow always leaves you confused, guilty, drained, second-guessing yourself, and you couldn't explain it because there was no obvious reason, nothing you could point to, no proof you could show anyone without looking paranoid. And that is the brilliance of the mask. It is designed to make you doubt your own perception while it slowly trains you to betray yourself. And tonight you're going to learn how it works, what it looks like in real human behavior, why it targets chosen ones first, how to test for it without becoming hateful or suspicious of everyone, and how to cut the cord cleanly, without drama, without fighting, and without giving them the emotional spike they came for. Because the goal is not to become afraid of people, the goal is to become sovereign. And the moment you learn to recognize the mask, it stops working, not gradually, immediately. Because the Archons can survive your prayers, but they cannot survive your clarity. The first thing you need to understand is why the mask has to look nice. It wants you drifting. It wants you explaining. It would do that. But cruelty wakes you up. Cruelty activates your boundaries. Cruelty forces you to choose, and the Archon does not want you choosing. It wants you drifting. It wants you drifting. It wants you staying in the gray zone where your intuition is screaming, but your mind keeps negotiating, and that gray zone is where harvest happens. Because a chosen one's energy is not just emotional, it is directional, it is creative, it is manifestational, and when it is pointed cleanly, it breaks patterns, it becomes contagious, it liberates other people. And what is the Shapel can't person mask in person is under every smile, because I need you to be careful here. I am not saying every kind person is an Archon, and I'm not saying people can't be genuinely good, and I'm not saying you should go looking for enemies under every smile, because that paranoia itself becomes a harvest channel, and the Archon loves nothing more than a chosen one who turns their gift of perception into suspicion, because suspicion isolates you, and isolation makes you easier to manipulate. So listen closely. The mask is not about labeling people as demons. The mask is about identifying patterns of energy exchange that consistently move you away from your truth. It typically appears in one of three primary forms, and if you understand these three forms, you'll start seeing the pattern everywhere. Not because the world is full of monsters, but because the same spiritual mechanics repeat in predictable ways. And once you recognize the mechanics, you can stay compassionate without being accessible. The first form is the rescuer mask, the person who seems unusually eager to help you, guide you, protect you, save you, introduce you to something life-changing. And at first it feels like a miracle, because chosen ones often spend years misunderstood and alone. So when someone finally sees you, it hits like water in a desert. But pay attention to the cost of the help, because true help makes you stronger, clearer, more independent, while the rescuer mask makes you more dependent, more confused, and more grateful in a way that quietly turns into obligation. And the moment you try to stand on your own, the moment you stop needing them, the moment you make it The second form is the innocent mask, the person who seems soft, wounded, harmless, misunderstood, constantly going through something, and your empathy activates because chosen ones carry a lot of compassion, especially if they've suffered. So the innocent mask uses pain as access. It uses tragedy as leverage. It uses vulnerability as a currency. And again, real vulnerability exists. Real people hurt. Real trauma is real, but the mask weaponizes it, because whenever your boundaries appear, the innocent mask suddenly collapses. It becomes the victim. It implies you are cruel for having needs. It implies you are abandoning them. The third form is the most common in spiritual spaces. The person who talks about love, peace, forgiveness, light, high vibration, and they sound correct. They use the right words. They quote the right teachings. They appear calm, but their calmness is not peace. It is control, and their love is not love. It is superiority wrapped in softness, and they often position themselves as someone who is above normal human emotions, which sounds spiritual until you realize it is a way to invalidate your inner warnings. Because when you feel something is off, the enlightened mask tells you you're projecting, you're triggered, you're low vibration, you're not healed, and the result is that you stop trusting your perception and you start. Here's the part most people miss. But what people say, it is about what your system experiences after contact. Because the mask can sound holy, it can sound kind, it can sound holy, it cannot fake the energetic aftertaste. And chosen ones have to learn to measure aftertaste, not intention, because the mask often hides behind good intentions, and good intentions are meaningless if the impact is consistently draining you. And I want you to start noticing 3 things after interacting with someone who appears nice. Do you feel clearer? Do you feel more like yourself? Do you feel contracted through conjures? Because the mask usually leaves a residue, and the residue is the out. So how does it actually hide in nice people? What are the behavioral signatures? Because you asked for the mask, and masks have seams. They always have seams. And Jesus taught his inner circle to look for seams, not in the sense of hunting, but in the sense of seeing clearly, because the seam is where imitation fails. The first seam is inconsistency between words and outcomes, where the person says all the right things, but your life becomes more chaotic after listening to them. They say they support you, but they subtly sabotage your momentum. They encourage you, but only when you are small enough to be safe. They praise your growth until it threatens their influence. The second seam is the inability to celebrate your independence, because real love celebrates your freedom, but the mask needs you attached, so it discourages independence through soft tactics. It discourages you from changing jobs, starting projects, moving cities, cutting habits, upgrading your standards, because every upgrade reduces access, and the mask cannot say please stay weak, so it says I miss the old you, or you're changing, or don't forget where you came from, and it wraps a leash in nostalgia. The third seam is their addiction to your emotional output, because the mask feeds through reaction, so it gently presses your triggers again and again, not enough for you to leave immediately, just enough for you to produce energy, and you'll notice it because the conversation keeps circling into the same topics, the same debates, the same dippates, the same drama, the same misunderstandings that could have been resolved, but same misunderstandings that could have been resolved, but somehow never are, because resolution would end the harvest, and the mask does not want closure. Another seam is how they handle your boundaries, and this is one of the cleanest tests in existence, because you can learn everything you need to know about someone's frequency by watching what happens when you say no, not angrily, not dramatically, just calmly, just clearly, because no is a frequency, no is a boundary that reveals intent, and the mask cannot tolerate no for long, because no blocks access. A healthy person might be disappointed, but they will respect you, they will adjust, they will still treat you with dignity, but the mask will punish the no. In subtle ways, it will withdraw warmth, it will become cold, it will become sarcastic, it will become fine, it will guilt you, it will remind you of everything it has done for you. It will tell you you're selfish, it will say you're overreacting, it will act confused as if your boundary is irrational, because the goal is to train you to avoid boundaries in the future. The goal is to make no feel dangerous, and once no feels dangerous, you become programmable. You become polite to your own destruction. So what is the countermeasure? How do chosen ones respond without becoming cruel, without becoming suspicious, without becoming isolated? Because the point is not to hate people. The point is to stop feeding the system, and the most powerful thing you can do is to remove the emotional supply while maintaining calm clarity. because the mask thrives on extremes, either worship or war. Either you idolize them or you fight them, because both create energetic cords, but calm clarity creates none. Calm clarity is the blade that cuts without drama, and there are 3 moves that consistently neutralize. The first is to slow down access, because the mask accelerates intimacy. It pushes speed, it pushes urgency, it pushes tell me everything, trust me, we're the same. I've never met anyone like you, I can help you. And chosen ones often fall for speed because they crave being understood, so your first defense is time. Time reveals seams, time reveals inconsistencies, time reveals whether kindness is stable or transactional, and you don't need to accuse anyone. You simply stop giving immediate access. You stop sharing your deepest vulnerabilities early. You stop letting new people into your inner circle because they feel familiar, because the mask often. The second move is to become outcome-based, not word-based, meaning you start measuring relationships by what your life looks like after them, how your nervous system behaves, how your clarity behaves, how your energy behaves, because the mask can always say the right thing, but it cannot consistently produce the right outcome. And once you become outcome-based, you stop arguing, you stop defending, you stop trying to prove, you simply observe, and observation breaks the spell. Because the mask needs you inside the story. It needs you emotionally participating. It needs you chasing explanations. It needs you trying to win their approval. But when you observe, you step out of the theater. You become the audience. And the third move is to seal your attention, because attention is fuel. And the mask's primary harvest tool is not the person themselves. It is the time you spend thinking about them, replaying them, analyzing them, imagining conversations, preparing replies, feeling guilty, feeling angry, because that internal loop is the feeding tube. And if you cut the internal loop, you cut the harvest even if the person is still physically near you. And the way you cut it is brutally simple. You stop giving your imagination to people who have not earned it. You stop hosting them in your mind. You stop letting your inner world become their playground. Because chosen ones have powerful imaginations, and that imagination is creative energy, it is sacred. And the Archon mask's goal is to rent space inside your mind for free. So you begin practicing a new rule. If someone consistently leaves you drained, confused, or ashamed, you do not give them a second life inside your thoughts. You end the replay. You return to your breath. You return to your body. You return to your day. You return to what is real, and you will be shocked how quickly the cord weakens when the inner replay stops. Because most cords are not held by the other person, most cords are held by your own attention. Now, I want to give you a simple test you can run without confronting anyone, without causing drama, and without labeling anyone as an Archon, because the goal is to get you clarity while keeping you safe. And this test is a 3-part test that exposes the mask almost every time. First, offer a small boundary, not a big one, a small one, such as delaying a reply, saying you can't meet, saying you need time, saying you're focusing on something, and watch what happens, not what they say, but what their energy does. Do they respect it or do they punish it? Second, share a small win, something good happening in your life, and watch their response. Do they celebrate? Do they become quiet? Do they redirect to themselves? Do they worry? Do they find a problem? Because the mask often cannot tolerate your expansion. It can tolerate your pain, because pain keeps you close, but your wins make you taller, and taller people see further, and seeing further ends manipulation. Third, become slightly unavailable emotionally, not cold, not rude, just neutral, just calm, and see if they escalate, because the mask needs emotional juice, so when you stop giving it, it often creates a situation to extract it, a sudden misunderstanding, a guilt trip, a crisis, a we need to talk. Because harvest requires intensity, and neutrality starves it. And here is the hardest truth for chosen ones. Sometimes they are genuinely trying. Sometimes they are genuinely trying. Sometimes they have trauma. Sometimes they are confused. But the mask is still operating through them, and that is why discernment matters. Because discernment is not hatred. Discernment is not hatred. Discernment is not judgment. Discernment is love with eyes open. And Jesus did not teach chosen ones to become naive. He did not teach them to be endlessly accessible. He taught them to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, meaning strong perception with a clean heart while ending access. You can forgive without staying. You can pray for someone without letting them feed on you. It learned to speak softly, it language itself, because in these times the moral high ground and the difference between and light, it learned to speak softly, it learned to speak softly, it learned to say I'm only trying to help, and it learned to say I'm only trying to help, and it learned to claim moral high ground, and that is why chosen ones must become fluent in the difference between truth and control, because truth liberates, but control confuses, truth invites choice, but control manipulates choice, and the mask often reveals itself through a subtle refusal to let you choose freely. It always needs to steer you, it always needs to nudge you, it always needs to age. You simply reclaim your steering wheel, you reduce access. If you've been targeted by the mask before, you might be wondering why it keeps happening, why you keep meeting the same person in a different body, and the answer is that the mask is attracted to a specific frequency signature, and chosen ones broadcast that signature when they are about to break out of an old life, when they are on the edge of a breakthrough, when their soul is ready to upgrade, because that is when their energy becomes most valuable, and that is when interference becomes most aggressive. So do not see it as a curse, see it as a signal. If you are suddenly surrounded by nice people who feel off, it may be because you are leveling up and the system is trying to attach anger. So tonight, what do you do with this? How do you apply it immediately in your real life? Because information alone does not save chosen ones, application does. So here's the simplest action you can take. Choose one relationship that consistently leaves you drained, confused, or guilty, and for the next 7 days, do not confront, do not accuse, do not explain. Simply do 3 things. Slow down your replies, reduce your emotional disclosure, and observe their reaction. And if you see punishment, escalation, guilt tactics, or attempts to pull intensity out of you, you have your answer. Not about whether they are evil, but about whether the dynamic is safe for your nervous system and your mission. And if it is not, and when you step back, you may feel a strange withdrawal, not because you miss them, but because cords feel like comfort when you have lived with them long enough. And chosen ones sometimes confuse cords with love, they confuse intensity with destiny, they confuse familiarity with safety, but you are not here to repeat old patterns, you are here to become free, and freedom often feels empty at first because you are used to noise, but in that emptiness your real life returns, your creativity returns, your focus returns, and you start realizing how much of your energy was being spent managing other people's emotions, anticipating reactions, walking on invisible eggshells. And now I'm going to end this with the most important line Jesus would want a chosen one to remember about the mask, and it is this: you do not need to prove that something is wrong in order to leave it. You do not need a list of evidence. You do not need a list of evidence. You do not need permission. You do not need permission. You do not need the other person to agree, because your energy is your responsibility. Your attention is your responsibility, and the Archon mask survives through delayed decisions. It survives through endless analysis. It survives through hoping the nice person will suddenly become safe if you explain one more time. But chosen ones are not he. If you recognize this pattern of you passing with nice person who left you feeling smaller, walkier, and less like yourself, then tonight I want you to do one thing, not a ritual, not a prayer, a decision. I want you to choose clarity, choose one small boundary, and hold it without guilt, and then watch, because the reaction will reveal everything. And if you want to seal this teaching into your field right now, write this sentence somewhere you can see it. Kindness does not require you to abandon yourself, and once you live by that, you become invisible to the mask, because the mask can only hide in nice people. When you confuse niceness with goodness, when you confuse